Hi, so we are ready to start. Thank you all so much for joining us. Welcome to another installment of Celebrating What Unites Us. This is a regular cooking demo series and a collaboration among Age-Friendly Boston, Armenian Heritage Park on the Greenway, and Oldways. Here at Oldways, we're a food and nutrition nonprofit helping people live healthier, happier lives, and we're so honored to be part of this series. Today we have two wonderful guests joining us. We're going to talk all about flatbreads and learn how to make them. Before we get started, I'll remind you that you'll receive the recipes for every dish in your email. They'll be emailed to you after today's webinar, and that you can also find a recording of today's webinar on YouTube. Search for Oldways PT on YouTube, or please visit oldwayspt.org to watch this and all of our other webinars in the series. We're so glad to have you with us today, and now I'm glad to introduce Andrea Burns from Age-Friendly Boston.
Good morning to everyone on this beautiful spring day in Boston. At least I see some people are writing to us from all over the country where it's snowy in Iowa. But we have a beautiful spring day, and I'm so glad to be with everybody today. Just to know that this is going to be re-aired on BNN and also Boston City TV on cable, which is a really great opportunity to magnify this message. And I'm from the Age Strong Commission, and I work on the Age Friendly Boston Initiative, which is really about increasing health and well-being for Boston's residents, especially older residents. So this really fits in beautifully with that. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Dana Siles from Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, and she's going to speak with us for a couple of minutes about her organization. Take it away, Dana. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you everybody for having me here. Really appreciate it. I'm just really excited to share a little bit about our organization, who we are and what we do. The name of the organization, as Andrea said, is Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. And as the name implies, that's what our specialty is. We recover excess food from businesses and we transport it to human service agencies who then give that food to anybody who needs it, whether they are suffering from homelessness or hunger or food insecurity on any level. So we are partnered with approximately 100 human service agencies in Massachusetts, mostly Eastern Massachusetts and mostly Greater Boston. And we pick up food every single day. We have about 140 food rescues every single week. And we have recovered over 500,000 pounds in the Greater Boston area so far in the last few years. There's lots of ways to get involved. You can volunteer, you can let your local restaurant know that there's no reason to have any excess food, that we can pick it up. There's lots of ways to get involved. You can visit www.rescuingleftovercuisine.org if you would like to learn more. And you can always email me as well with any questions. And there is a link to my email right on our website. So we are just delighted to be here. Just another quick note about our organization is, in addition to recovering excess food, we kind of pivoted during the pandemic and started also picking up meals that have been specifically prepared for donation and bringing them directly to households, which has been an amazing experience. So during the pandemic, we've actually transported over 60,000 meals to over 400 homes and human service agencies combined, just during the pandemic alone. And we didn't know that we were going to be doing the prepared meals service kind of until it happened, but the need was there. We had the infrastructure and we made it work. And it's just been an incredibly gratifying experience. So we work with Boston Public Schools, Neighborhood House Charter School, Boston Healthcare for the Homeless Program, and a few other organizations as well, to be able to bring meals directly to the homes of their students and clients who are experiencing critical food insecurity. I am very proud to be a part of this organization. I absolutely love this organization. I love that it gives businesses the opportunity to donate food. I love that it gives us as just people the opportunity to volunteer. An average volunteer experience takes about 40 minutes, recovers about 40 pounds of food, which is the equivalent of 32 meals. It doesn't get much easier than that to be able to make a really big impact in a really small amount of time. So we're just so delighted to be here in Massachusetts, especially in Boston. And thank you, Andrea, and the entire team for having us. And again, our website is www.rescuingleftovercuisine.org. And we hope to have you aboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. And that was so interesting to hear about your sort of creative and innovative approach during the pandemic. And that's a great example of what businesses have been able to do this past year. Now I want to turn it over to Susan Deranian, who's one of our dear, dear friends at the Armenian Heritage Park, as well as Age Friendly Boston. And thank you for everything that you've done and for teaching this class today, which is really kind of sort of embodies the idea of celebrating what unites us, sort of common thread that runs through so many different cuisines all over the world. So I would like to introduce Susan Deranian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah. Thanks so much, Andrea. I really miss seeing you and all the other age-friendly Boston participants at the park for celebrating what unites us. Going back to 2019, I remember so much fun, and that's kind of how this whole theme started today. Not so much teaching. I'm not in so much in a teaching realm today, but more in a showing what unites us realm today. One dough that stretches around the world, and Andrea, I have you to thank for that. After so many great gatherings, seeing the chefs cook their signature meals from different ethnicities. There were so many comments, like you said, oh, we do that in our country. Oh, we do that in our country. We have those spices, and we saw more similarities than differences. And then I remember you said, we were talking, and you said, oh, well, you know, it seems like every country has their own type of pizza or flatbread or some kind, different toppings on some sort of dough. So that's what sparked this today. I really miss gathering at the park, and hopefully we'll get to see all our old friends, not old friends, our friends that we miss so dearly back at the park, maybe in September. We'll see how everything goes. So I hope you enjoy today's few representative recipes of showing the dough that stretches around the world and unites us all. Thanks so much, Andrea and Hannah and Oldways and the Armenian Heritage Park for making this all possible. Enjoy. Bon appetit. Hi, we're going to start out with making the one dough fits all recipe. This is going to be the dough that stretches around the world, and I'm going to get started, and then I'll explain a little bit more about it as we're going along, because there's going to be some pauses while the yeast proofs. So first of all, you're going to get the recipe, of course, and the recipe, the first step is to measure the flour, but I'm going to start out with proofing the yeast, and I'm using the active dry yeast because that's going to take a few minutes, and it's important to have the right temperature of water. I've just taken hot tap water, and you can do the old test on your wrist, or I have a thermometer that I'm going to take the measurement, take the temperature of, and it shouldn't be over 105. I'm going to pour in half a cup. Okay, the recipe calls for 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. There's 2. teaspoons. And then we need a little bit of sugar for the yeast to bloom. The sugar is like the food for the yeast. So now we're going to put in a teaspoon of sugar, and I'm going to dissolve that. Just mix it up a little bit to get the yeast dissolved. You can see clumps right now, so the warm water helps it bloom, and it also helps the yeast and the sugar to dissolve. That way the yeast can eat up the sugar. This will probably take about 5 minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna measure out the flour. There's the yeast. Now we need 2.5 cups flour. And in baking something like this, I always level it off because you really need to be accurate. That's 1. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that. I keep on forgetting I'm being filmed. And 1/2. Aside. And now 1 teaspoon of salt I've already measured. And I'm just going to use a whisk to combine the two to evenly distribute the salt within the flour. And like I started saying, that this is the one dough that stretches around the world. So it can be a good carrier. It makes a great carrier for all kinds of different toppings. And we're going to be doing 4 different toppings, 4 different pizzas today, from different ethnic origins. And I think you'll see there's a lot of similarities. So now I'm taking a look at the yeast, and it's almost fully doubled, and it's gotten very foamy. You can probably see the liquid at the bottom, and all of this is the yeast foaming. And it's good to use now. It doesn't have to be totally doubled. It'll continue to work a little bit in the as we mix. So I started out with 1/2 cup of water, so now I'm going to add another 1/2 cup of water. And I'm putting the water back into the yeast cup just to get all the goodness out. And now we just need the 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm using just extra virgin olive oil. And it's going to look, at first you're going to say, oh, this isn't going to make a dough at all, but you just keep on mixing and it'll all get incorporated. We've got a ball of dough that's really craggy and a little bit wet. So now I'm going to flour the surface, the counter, lightly flour to begin with. And maybe flour my hands as well. And now we're going to knead the dough. Push it with the heels of your hands and then turn it like 1/4 of a turn, and just keep on doing that. Okay, looks like it's been about 5 minutes, and you can see how the dough is getting a lot smoother and it's soft. Lightly oil your bowl, just a couple of drops of oil so it doesn't stick to the bowl, and it's going to rise let it rise for probably it'll take a couple of hours. So I'm going to just put roll the top of the dough in the bowl just to get it lightly oiled, and cover it with a plastic wrap. And then wrap it up in a big towel to prevent any drafts, so it doesn't get into any drafts. And this is my very clean but old dough towel. And then I'll put it in a warm place. Sometimes I turn the oven on warm just to get the heat going, or put it in the sun if it's a sunny day, or just so there's no drafts around and it's kind of in the warmest place you've got. Okay, now we're ready to roll out the dough. The unveiling, it looks beautiful. I've preheated the oven, by the way, and now we have our dough that is doubled in size. I'll take away the towel that kept it nice and draft free, and I'm going to use half the dough right now. Now we're going to make the Margherita Pizza. Margherita Pizza is from Italy, and it's probably the most typical when you think of pizza. It got its name because it was made in honor of Queen Margherita of Italy, because it shows the Italian flag colors, the red sauce, the green basil, and the white mozzarella cheese. Now we have the pizza crust ready to be topped. Going to make the topping. The tomato is very simple sauce. I don't know if you'd even call it a sauce. It's a can of Italian peeled tomato, and this is a 14-ounce can that's going to be drained. So these are whole tomatoes. They need to be crushed. Now add to the tomatoes, we're going to add some oregano, a half a teaspoon of salt, a few grinds of black pepper, maybe more than a few grinds. I'm going to spread this on the pizza. And then buffalo mozzarella, and now a few drizzles of olive oil. Now it goes into a preheated 500-degree oven. Wow. I'm going to put it on the cooling rack, and then just drop some basil to serve. How's that? Your Margherita Pizza for Queen Margherita of Italy. We're going to start making lamejun. Lamejun is a Armenian dish. It's some people call it Armenian pizza. That's why we're doing it today. It's a blend of Middle Eastern spices and ground lamb. You could also do a mixture of lamb and beef. I've even seen it done as a vegan dish with mushrooms instead of meat. So let's get started. I've measured out 16 ounces of canned plum tomatoes, and I'm going to crush them by hand. Okay, so I've crushed all the tomatoes now, and I'm letting them drain a little bit more. So now we're going to put into the food processor the chunked up red pepper that I've done. parsley and chunks of onion, parsley, and then these are just 2 peeled garlic cloves. You can kind of smash them if you want. This is going to be processed just to the point of a chunky puree. Okay, now it looks like this is done. It's a little bit chunky. It's kind of, I don't know what you call mealy, a little bit chunky, like a fine chop, which in the old days, this is all done by hand. And maybe some people do, but today, I think it's a lot quicker and faster to do it in the food processor. And what I'm doing is I'm just draining it again. So this is going to be added to the meat. And I'm using all lamb because I like it that way, but again, you could use half beef, half lamb. And I also have the 2 tablespoons of tomato paste measured out in here already. And I'm also going to be adding harissa. And I think I'm gonna add it to the chopped tomatoes because it'll disperse, get mixed in with that more evenly than just adding it straight to the meat. Okay. Also, I'm using mint. That looks like about a teaspoon, right? And it's in big leaves right now, you can see. So I'm going to crush it between my hands. And I've also measured the spices, the Aleppo pepper, the cumin, and allspice, and salt is in here, and paprika. There we go. Okay, now this looks like, so that made a lot of juice, as you can see. Now I'm going to mix in the harissa a little bit with those vegetables, and they all go into the pot with the meat. And I'm going to mix by hand because it just seems like, and I have impeccably clean hands. I think that's a Julia Child saying, impeccably clean hands. It's just easier to mix meat, like if you're making a meatloaf or hamburgers, or it's easier to get everything all mixed in together. The topping should be really thin. I'm going to use a measuring cup to spread it around. I saw in a cookbook or in a recipe to put saran wrap, plastic wrap over it and push it around that way with your hands, which I'm going to give that a try right now. And that makes it much easier. And you can maneuver it around so easily. You go almost to the very, very edge. Just leave a little bit of white dough on the edge. Okay. There you go. There is our lamejun ready to go into a 500-degree oven. Nice. I had put it on the lower rack of the oven to start out with, so the crust gets cooked, and then I put it on the upper rack just to broil. Didn't put it on broil, but to cook the topping a little bit more, to get it a little bit sizzly. to start making the filling and the toppings for the Harissa Pizza North African sausage pizza. So first of all, we're going to make the sauce. So it's just pouring just a regular tomato sauce, any kind is fine, into a jar. That's going to make it easy to mix up. And now here's the main ingredient, the harissa, which is a North African chili paste, and I'm going to put in a tablespoon. So now I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm using the extra virgin. 2, 3, a teaspoon of salt, and 1 clove of garlic smashed. I love doing this. Gets out the frustrations. That's that. Mix it up in the jar and just put it aside while we make the other toppings. Now we're ready to mix up the ingredients for the North African sausage. Again, like I said, this has like some nice warm spices in it. So first you mix up the spices in a small bowl. I've already added the salt and pepper and the ginger to this, but now I'm going to add the allspice, something I use a lot of. So this is a half a teaspoon of allspice, and then coriander, a half a teaspoon of coriander. Now cloves, a quarter of a teaspoon of cloves, and now cumin. I use a lot of cumin, that's why I buy a big container of it. I use it in my chili. So a quarter of a teaspoon of cumin, and now a quarter of a teaspoon of cinnamon. So now just mix this up so it'll be nice and blended together when we add it to the ground turkey. Oh, I forgot. The Aleppo pepper. Sorry. One of the most important things. I buy a big container of it and then put it in my own small containers. It calls for 1/8 of a teaspoon, but a good pinch is good enough. It's not really that spicy. You could use cayenne pepper if you want. I think cayenne is actually more spicy than Aleppo. Aleppo is more granular, as you can see. It's more like chopped chili peppers. Dried chopped chili peppers. Okay, now I'm just going to sprinkle this over the meat. And I'm going to mix this all up with my impeccably clean hands because that's probably the easiest way. But before I do that, I'm going to add the harissa paste, some more harissa paste, a tablespoon of harissa paste, and again, minced garlic, and I use my handy dandy mincer to mince the garlic. So that all goes in together. Sorry about that. And now I'm going to just mix it up, sort of like, you know, mostly using my fingers. Oil a plate. This is very sticky. The turkey tends to be sticky because it's just so lean. I'm going to oil this plate and oil my fingers too. I know it looks messy, but it'll taste good. Oil my hands and then make sort of evenly sized burgers out of this. Okay, now the sausages are made. The patties are made, I should say, of the North African sausage. And my pan is heated up. I'm going to put in a little drizzle of olive oil. Sizzle, sizzle. These will probably take a couple of minutes on each side. Okay, now they're ready to turn. Ah, they smell so good. I can smell all the spices. Okay, I'm gonna give it another try. Ooh, are these juicy? Oh, nice, nice. Okay, so now we're gonna make the yogurt sauce, which is really gonna be more like a dipping sauce, or you could like drizzle it over the fully cooked pizza when it's done. It's a nice cooling sauce. It's a nice contrast between the very strong spices, very and unique spices. So I've already got the yogurt and the minced garlic in here, and I just use my handy dandy little mincer to mince the garlic rather than chopping it, because I like to do things the easy way. And I've got the lemon juice, a tablespoon of lemon juice, and the garlic already in here, and 3 tablespoons of olive oil that I've pre-measured to make things faster. And now I'm going to add the minced parsley, which really adds a lot of nice, refreshing bite to the sauce and a little bit of crunch. I love parsley, but you know, if you don't have parsley, or if you don't like parsley, you can use cilantro as well. And now the mint, very refreshing. Nice, again, nice contrast to all the other warm spices that are in this pizza. Okay, now I have both of the crusts laid out. Anyway, so now we're ready to top. The sauce is marinated a little bit, so a little bit of sauce, not too much. Now, I'll do one at a time. Now, the recipe says to do some Parmesan, a sprinkling of Parmesan, and then at the end a sprinkling a sprinkling of mozzarella, and then at the end a sprinkling of Parmesan, but I just mixed them together. The sausage. So you just do little crumples. So every bite has a few bites of sausage. It says slices of feta, but I think using the crumbles, a crumpled feta is a little bit easier to handle, and it kind of melts in better. And then some red onion, purple onion, whatever you want to call it, on top, however much you like. We're ready to put these in a 500-degree preheated oven. And I'm going to start it in the middle. I may put it down to the bottom, depends on how it's how the browning is getting on the bottom. Now it's been about 15-20 minutes. At about 10 minutes, I put the sheet on the lower rack. And now it looks really nice. So this looks like it came out really well. I'm ready to cut into it. It smells so good. Hopefully you'll try it on your own. So here's the pizza, and I think I'm gonna just put a dollop of the yogurt on the side to use as a dipping sauce. You could thin, it's really thick because I use the Greek yogurt, and if you wanted to thin it out with some more either olive oil or lemon juice or even milk or even water, if you wanted to drizzle it on the top, this would make a nice appetizer. So there you go. Happy eating. Okay, now we're going to do make the Portuguese pizza. I'm going to be using just a good quality marinara sauce, preferably one without sugar added. And I'm just going to be doctoring it up a little bit with some marjoram, which is a lot like oregano, and also a quarter of a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, but you can add more if you like. And I'm going to try to crush these a little bit more, just so you're not biting into one whole big hunk of red pepper flake. Okay, and you can add other spices if you want, like oregano, ground sage, chopped fennel fronds fennel is used a lot in Portuguese cooking. Like, it's sometimes called anise, and the fronds of it that look like dill add a nice sweet flavor. Okay, then you just mix this up, and that's ready to go. And I've already got my other toppings here ready, the shredded mozzarella, a couple of sliced green onions, scallions, some sliced black olives. I used Kalamata olives. You could use whatever other kind you want. These were the ones in brine, but you can use canned black olives, and however you want to slice them is fine. If you like bite into a lot of olive, then slice it the long way, but I sliced them crosswise. And the very typical linguiça sausage, typical of Portugal, is a very smoky sausage. And this is just about like a 5-inch, 6-inch length of sausage that I sliced thinly. And it adds a nice smoky flavor. It's smoked, and I'm thinking it has some smoked paprika in it. You might, when you cut it, double check to see if it has a casing around it that you'd want to remove before you start slicing it, to get that tough casing off. Okay, now I'm ready to check the dough and the one dough fits all, and start rolling it out. Okay, now we have the Portuguese pizza. Just pulled out of the oven. It looks like I put the sheet pan on the bottom shelf of the oven first to get a nice set on the crust, and then about 6 minutes later put it up to the top shelf of the oven to melt the cheese a little bit more and get it, you can't see it, but it's bubbling a little bit. So there you have it, your Portuguese pizza with linguiça.
Susan, thank you so much for that cooking demo and showing us 4 fantastic looking flatbreads. I'm going to invite you to turn your camera on now because I know we have a lot of questions from everyone about all those great recipes.
I'm trying to do that.
Let's see, I'm going to ask you to start the video. I just press that button. There you are.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Sorry about that. I'm
Those
not
recipes look great.
technologically enabled.
So we have a lot of questions. The first question actually came in before this cooking demo. Someone saw that you're going to be making lamejun and remembered their grandmother's version of that recipe. But that person had never quite perfected the dough and wondered, what were your tips? They remembered their grandmother's lamejun being crispy but pliable. Do you have any secrets for getting that texture?
I wish I did. I think my secret is go buy it. No, no. Actually, I found it depended on where you put it in the oven and for how long. Like, start at the bottom and then flip to the switch it to the top level. But you kind of have to fool around with your own oven. I was trying to streamline all these recipes so anyone could make them. And I wasn't aiming for perfection so much as the idea that anyone could enjoy things from other ethnicities and that they're the similarity. So that's why I used one dough recipe, whereas if you were a real dough head, you would maybe turn up your nose at that particular recipe. But I was trying to do it so it was more casual and unfussy, I guess you'd say. But I found that it's just for the Lamejun, you do want the softness on the pliability in the center and the crisp outer edges. And I think it's just a matter of tweaking around with your oven.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that question.
Yeah, we have some more questions about the Lamejun specifically, or in general, when you're working with dough. Do you have tips and tricks? I know we had to cut out some of the rolling out in your footage, but sometimes it's tough to roll out pizza dough at home.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes you need it to rest a little bit so the gluten will relax a little bit. The working of the gluten will relax a little bit. I tend to be a little bit impatient, so I just keep on either rolling it. Sometimes I don't even roll it with a rolling pin. I just use my hands and push it around. And if it's not pushing the way I want, I just put that one aside, go back to the other piece of dough and continue working like that. Part of it depends on how thick you want the dough. On all of these pizzas, there was a variation in thicknesses, depending upon what the toppings were going to be. If you have a lot of toppings, you want thicker dough to carry them, to hold the weight. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a trick so much. It's just, it depends on the weather too. So I hope that helped.
A lot of trial and error, I think, to just do. We have a couple of questions about making these flatbreads vegetarian. You had mentioned that some Lamejun recipes use mushrooms. So our first question is about how many mushrooms would you substitute for that quantity of lamb in the pizza?
Well, I've never done it myself because I'm kind of like my meat, but I saw the recipe in a former participant in this show, Lena Tastian, and her book, Vegetarian Armenian Cooking, Vegan Armenian. I have it right here. Mm-hmm. Vegan Armenian Cooking, a Vegan Armenian Kitchen Cookbook. And I saw the recipe in her book, and maybe here it is right here. 20 white button mushrooms, and then tomato and green or red pepper, parsley, like the normal stuff you would put in Lamejun topping, but she called for 20 button mushrooms. I think you could probably go online and find some too.
That sounds really good.
But you know, any pizza could be a vegetarian.
How about the Harissa pizza? Would that be good without that homemade sausage? Are there other ways we could get all those great spices in there?
I would say again, maybe the mushroom as a carrier, since mushroom has the umami, and the meat-like texture. So substitute mushroom for the meat, and you can use any kind of mushrooms too for different textures.
We have a question about the temperature. Were all of these flatbreads at 500 degrees?
Yes, I use 500, but I kind of tend to cook at high temperatures because again, I'm impatient about cooking. So, but you can adjust your oven accordingly. I tended to start out at the bottom of the oven and then switch it to the top just so the crust, I mean, I wasn't using a pizza stone or anything. Again, I was making it like really simple that anyone could do without a lot of special equipment and so forth. So if you using a pizza stone, it would get more complicated. Yeah, I used 500, but feel free to experiment with your own oven.
Yeah, a few weeks back we had someone talking about grilling pizzas and putting them on the grill. So that could be another option to experiment with.
Exactly. Actually, I think I grill more pizza than I cook more pizza in an oven.
We have a few questions about making the dough. So the first is, what kind of flour did you use?
You know what? I just used regular all-purpose flour because I was just trying to make it as simple as possible, more accessible to a lot of people and not get too fussy with it. So I just used regular, I think it was Pillsbury all-purpose flour.
And someone is wondering, did you keep the jar of yeast at room temperature? How do you store that?
I store it in the refrigerator, definitely, because it does have a limited shelf life. I did bring it to room temp when I used it, though. Just, I think it dissolved better.
Mm-hmm. And we have a question from Debbie who says, can the dough be made and then frozen? And is that going to affect the texture in any way?
It can be refrigerated for a few days. I've done that. I haven't frozen it myself, but it's worth a try.
I think it might be worth trying. I've bought it from the grocery store frozen before,
Yeah.
letting it
Yeah.
thaw.
And again, this dough was like one you could make, but there are alternatives. I mean, you could purchase the dough, you could purchase a pre-made crust, you could use, for Lamejun, a lot of people use flour tortillas instead of making your own dough. You can use naan bread, the Indian naan bread, and put the same toppings on it for any of these. What else? Lavash.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Lynn. Did you scoop the flour with the measuring cup, or do you ever spoon it into the measuring cup?
I was scooping it, spooning it in. I see what you're getting at. Spooning it in would incorporate more air and make it lighter. So I guess I was scooping it because I knew that it was going to work with that amount of liquid. But if you want, and it didn't call for sifted flour, so that's why I wasn't that fussy with it. Sometimes, you know what, that's a good question. I guess I wasn't aware that I was doing that.
We have a really interesting question from Marie who says, could you cook the pizza in a panini maker?
Well, on one, if you don't close the panini maker, or you could make it into a panini. Putting another piece of dough on top.
Yeah, I wonder if you folded it, would that work?
Yeah. And there you go. What's that, a quesadilla?
So many variations on that.
I know. It was hard to pick out the ones I chose. I kind of did it because I have Portuguese neighbors. I am Armenian. Pizza is typically Italian. And I just was looking for a variety of flavors that kind of came together too.
Yeah. What would you say the next time you're ready to make pizza? What kind of toppings or flavors would you want to try next?
I think because it'll probably be grilled pizza when it gets a little bit warmer. And I usually use a lot of vegetables on that. Green pepper, red pepper, eggplant. I would maybe pre-cook, pre-roast some eggplant, definitely onions, maybe mushrooms, and tomatoes, and basil.
Nice. For those who maybe have not tried grilled pizza, do you have any tips? How do you make that happen?
Well, what I usually do is, full disclosure, I buy the dough because it's summer. And I not roll it out, I pat it out onto a baking sheet lined with parchment, and I oil both sides and then put it on the grill, put one side on the grill for to get it just so it sets and maybe a little bit toasty brown. Take it off. Oh, and then I turn it over so it just gets a little bit set so I could take it all off, and I top the first side, the more well done side, with tomatoes. And you can't put too much on each one because it'll just be too soggy. And then slide it back on, slide the least cooked side back onto the grill. And then cover the grill if you have cheese on it.
Oh, that sounds really good.
It's fun. It makes a nice party thing.
Oh, I bet. Really
Nice
nice
standing
and
around together. Yeah.
We have a question about keeping it really simple. Would the dough be good if you sprinkled it with olive oil and spices and baked it? Would that be a good flatbread, do you think?
Yeah, isn't that, that's a Syrian thing with za'atar,
Oh,
a thin dough, and with olive oil, and sprinkle on some za'atar, maybe some sumac with it, and just bake it.
oh, nice.
Yeah. You could use pita bread too for that.
So many options for different doughs, different toppings.
Staff of life. Right?
At this point, I'm going to invite Barbara from the Armenian Heritage Park on the Greenway to come on. I know she has some concluding remarks. Thank you so much, Susan, for your time, for showing us great recipes.
Thank you, Hannah, for all your help and for making this all possible.
Oh, Susan, thank you. I would like to, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you very, very much. Let me share, instead of calling you after this presentation, let me share some of the comments that have come in to us while we've been enjoying your absolutely fantastic presentation, because I couldn't say them any better. I absolutely love this excellent presentation. Everything looks so delicious. I look forward to making them. Thank you. Susan is so lovely, her cooking so soothing as her voice and manner of delivery. Thanks so much for the recipes. Now this is wonderful. Thanks for sharing your tips, Susan. I'll be teaching an online cooking class at the University of California international students this afternoon, and we'll be using some of your ideas. Gratefully, Hamov. So to you, to Oldways for being the most extraordinary partner in the whole wide world, as is Oldways. And a special thank you as well to Dana Siles. We are so delighted to learn about rescuing food, an extraordinary opportunity. And to each of you, thank you for sharing today's program with all of us. We look forward to welcoming you all at Armenian Heritage Park, where I guarantee you'll meet Susan at the wishing tree, where you can write your wish on a ribbon and hang it on the tree. Enjoy today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon, and have fun and enjoy this glorious day. Bye-bye.